Hey guys, Jay here. Welcome to Models Memories Weekly, episode 107. Models Memories is a show about nothing and is filmed in front of a live studio audience. This is a show where I talk about my painting, modeling, and wargame experiences from the week. Now you might be thinking to yourself, Jay, you put out 3 YouTube videos a week. How? Could I possibly have more to say? Well, I do, and here goes. This week, I got a little bit of extra painting done, and that is some Fallout Wasteland Warfare minis. I am loving the game Fallout Wasteland Warfare, and if I can get one thing done a week, I might be able to finish all the things I bought at Adepticon. Maybe. And I bought a little bit more. Just a little bit more. Don't look at me like that. I needed it. I got the insert, like the cardboard insert that you put in the box so that it can hold all of the tokens, because there are a lot of tokens for this game. But I painted up. I'm really on a robot kick, and so I got the RoboBrains painted. I painted one of them US Army and one of them Old Mountain or Blue Mountain. Big Mountain? Big Mountain. I painted one of them in the Big Mountain color scheme, and I dry brushed these guys. And I made a discovery with dry brushing that was by accident, but I'm hoping that I can kind of redo my steps and see if I can figure out exactly what I did, because it was an accident, but I want to be able to do that from now on. And that was on the Blue Mountain one, or Big Mountain one, and it gave me a lot of texture. I started off with like a stippling, and then I moved on to dry brushing to get a base coat of gray on the guy. And it's so crunchy. It's like kind of like got a sandpaper texture over everything. And it's not appropriate for a shiny robot, but if I could just do that, like if I could just create a perfect little sandpapery texture, that would be so great. Like to do that on old cloth or to do it on areas that I plan to paint with like a rust effect so that I can have that really, really tiny texture. It would be awesome. But currently, I have absolutely no idea how I did it. I was painting these guys with AK Interactive paint, which is sort of like medium. It's pretty sticky paint. And it seems like stickier paint is better for dry brushing than really, really thin paints like Reaper Master Series or any of the really watery paints, which I prefer sticky. If I have paint preference, it's definitely leaning towards the stickier side because it's better for dry brushing and it just gives you a little bit more options. Like the pre-thinned paint, it might be pre-thinned and really nice for brushwork, but then it's not nice for some other things where if the paint is sticky, I can always thin that down perfectly to however I need it. And I usually have to thin down the watery paint just a little bit to get it absolutely perfect. So in my opinion, sticky paint is the preferred paint. Although I wonder, because a lot of people start out with some of the better quality paints, and I wonder if you learn on really thin paint, if you prefer really thin paint, but if you grow up, like I grew up on apple barrel paint, which is as sticky as they come. And I wonder if that is part of why I have a preference for stickier paint. But yeah, I accidentally created a texture that I'm absolutely in love with, not on this miniature, but I really want to figure it out so going forward, I can get that texture whenever I actually want it. But I love the little robo brains. I was tempted because they have these domes, and in game, it's a clear dome and you can see the brain inside with a bunch of wires and stuff going into it. I was really tempted to be like, I bet I could do that. I bet I could paint a little brain on there, but then I almost immediately gave up because it's a dome, not just a window. If it was just a window, I could treat it like a painting and I could just, one perspective, paint the brain in there, kind of blur the edges to make it, look like you're looking at it from a certain window. But on a dome, I had no idea how to paint the brain, because if you're looking at it from the left, you should see part of the brain. If you're looking at it from the right, you should see part of the brain. I had no idea how to figure that out in terms of the physics of the window into the brain, but I like what I did. I kind of took inspiration from the rad suits, where they always have that unbelievably orange dome, and I am very happy with how they turned out. I got to play with these in-game. They're not good, but they're real tough and they're real cheap, so I'm really excited to play. I played Sean and his Caesar's Legion, and man, Legate Lanius wrecked me. Holy cow. Oh, leave it to Sean to buy and put together and construct the best possible list going into our very first game ever of this miniatures game. But I will defeat Legate Lanius, and I will defeat it with my robot army, or maybe my Nightkin army, or maybe my NCR. I bought way too much stuff. And I'm really, really excited for it. And I'm going to crack the secrets of this dry brushing so that I can have that texture whenever I want it. But speaking of things I really, really want, I was at Adepticon and I got to check out the Conquest, Last Argument of Kings, also known as CLAC. That is the official name of the game. And they were showing off a new miniature that is in the works, and it might be the largest plastic miniature for a war game ever, which is really, really cool. It is the Wardrun Drum Beast / Tauntor, a massive brontosaurus-looking dinosaur, which is ridden by the Wardrun, the orc faction in the game, and it's pretty cool. I got a chance to talk to the creator of the game, and it was great. He's just such a fun guy. He's so excited about his game, and when he was explaining this model to me, he said that it took like whatever stuff it takes to make one box of stuff. Apparently, this humongous kit takes 5. It takes 5 resources to put this thing together. They could have made 5 other units, but instead they put it all into this one unit. And the way he explained it, it almost sounded like people were telling him don't do that because it's so ridiculous, but I love it. I love it so much. It's such an amazing, interesting model. I can't wait to get my hands on this and paint it up. I'm gonna have to paint my entire Wardrun collection, which is it's still in the box, but I may have been working on some Conquest stuff, and you might see that in a little bit, and it's very, very exciting. But man, this miniature is so big and exciting. Like I've put together some of the Titans for Forge World, and they suck. They suck really, really bad to put together. Resin is not an appropriate material for gigantic minis. It's just a pain in the butt. Dremeling and carving and sanding and praying that the super glue is strong enough to hold together all of these parts. But plastic is going to be delightful, especially on the newer Conquest stuff, which is even better than some of their older stuff. It's going to be amazing. It's going to be a really, really big model. I'm going to have to clear some pretty good shelf space to actually have this thing just hanging around, but man, I cannot wait for potentially the biggest plastic miniature of all time for a war game. I mean, I know there's like Gundams and just toys out there that are like physically bigger, but it'll be interesting to see a Titan level unit for Conquest, The Last Argument of Kings, also known as CLAC. I love Jurassic Park. All 3 movies are excellent. I mean, Jurassic Park is one of those rare franchises where every single movie, even the one that isn't like number 2 isn't as good, but all 3 movies are absolutely excellent. And I'm so glad that they decided to just leave it at 3 and not make any more, because man, are those 3 movies absolute classics. I love 2. 3 is like divided, but in terms of like the internet's opinion of it, but I love 3. I've watched it dozens and dozens of times. The Spinosaurus is completely inaccurate based on what we know now, but at the time it was probably pretty close to like what the paleontologists and stuff thought was going on with Spinosaurus. Oh God, can you imagine how lame it would be if they made new Jurassic Park movies and they didn't bring the new scientific data into their designs and gave them like feathers and different proportions and stuff? Like, can you imagine how incredibly lame that would be? Man, so yeah, thank goodness. We all dodged a bullet there. Holy cow. Ooh, this model would be a really, really fun model to try my little dry brushing to see if I can get the texture going on this, because it is a big, big old dinosaur. And we don't know that much. We know a little bit about what the dinosaurs actually looked like, because I think some of the fossils, they have a little bit of color data based on what their skin looked like. So, I mean, like the classic thing to do, I think, would be Jurassic Park kind of warm grays. But maybe it'd be cool to do something really weird, like tiger spots all over it. Kind of like what Games Workshop is doing with the new Seraphon line, where they're going pretty crazy and extreme with the colors of the skin. This thing, I mean, it's just a humongous canvas to work on, and I am really, really excited for it. But speaking of one thing that I am sort of not excited for, there's a new thing coming to Star Wars Legion, a game I absolutely love, and it is a limited edition model. It's actually a couple of limited edition models in a diorama. So for anybody who is going to be in London for Star Wars Celebration, or I think this is also going to be available at Gen Con, you can get the exclusive Luke versus Vader duel in the Emperor's throne room at the end of Return of the Jedi. And, you know, it's not the most exciting thing in the whole world because we already have Operative Luke and we have Darth Vader. I think there's even an Operative Darth Vader. So these minis aren't like super exclusive, can't get them any other way. Like you can just buy them regularly for the game pretty much as they exist in this diorama right now. But it is weird. I think Legion is having a little bit of trouble building hype, especially under the shadow of Shatterpoint, because Shatterpoint is just the big, awesome new thing coming out right now. And so Legion is like, we're doing it too, guys. We're still here. Remember the Dark Troopers that we showed off a little while ago? They quietly came to pre-order. You can get them now. And so, but I don't think this limited edition diorama is the way to build hype. I mean, it's going to be really cool to the people who go to those conventions and care, but it's always, limited edition stuff is always really, really hard because you don't want it to be so cool that people feel like the vast majority of people who aren't able to get their hands on it are missing out. But you also don't want it to be so lame that nobody is excited for it. It's got to exist in this perfect middle ground where people who care are going to care a lot and people who don't care are just going to ignore it and be completely fine and not, you know, they're not going to get any bad feels from seeing it. And I think they struck a decent balance. You know, the throne room scene, it's one of the more exciting things, especially in Return of the Jedi, because Return of the Jedi is mostly Ewoks. it's fine. But a limited edition Ewok though could have been fun. I think, you know what? Scratch it. This is bad. The perfect thing they could have done is limited edition Ewoks, because a lot of people hate Ewoks. Sort of myself included. I love the meme of Ewoks, but that's what the limited edition model should have been. It should have been a weird limited edition Ewok. So that the people who are like, oh my God, I absolutely need the dumb, silly Ewok. That's the sort of reaction that you want. And everybody else is like, I don't want an Ewok. That's so lame. Who would want that? Me. That would be the perfect limited edition model. Where Luke, maybe it's just because it's old, like Luke fighting Vader in front of the Emperor in the throne room. It's just kind of old and we already have those miniatures. And so this is just slightly alternate poses for those miniatures. Darth Vader only has so many poses because his shoulders don't move. Operative Luke is pretty cool. The kind of Luke in the black clothing is kind of like the most exciting Luke because it's a little bit like, ooh, is he getting a little mean? Is he getting a little evil? He really went ham on all those guys on the sail barge in the beginning of the movie. Which, let's talk about Return of the Jedi for just a second. What was Luke's plan to rescue Han? Because he shows up without his lightsaber and then tries to shoot Jabba in the face. Which I don't know if that would work. I mean, Jabba is just a giant, huge slug, and presumably he's in a throne room full of nasty people who might shoot him in the face. So, would that have worked? And then his plan, I guess, at the end is just kill everybody and escape. But like, he's part of the Rebel Alliance. All of the Rebel Alliance heroes are like helping to break Han out of Carbonite. Why not just fly Home One, the Mon Calamari cruiser, right over Jabba's palace and say, yeah, this isn't fair, but just give us Han or else we'll nuke you. Oh, Star Wars, I love you so much. Yeah, this limited edition model is pretty darn cool. It's interesting that they worked it into a diorama, and it'd be interesting to see if they made this available for just mass sale or things like this. A lot of companies like Malifaux have tried out doing like little artsy pieces. I know Malifaux has like a range of 55mm miniatures that are based on their lore of their game. And I wonder if those appeal and how far that reaches, how many people are artistes who want to dabble in something like that, and how many people are just, I just want the guy I want to play with him on the tabletop and I want to have fun. So it's really interesting. I would love to know more. Maybe I need to talk to Scott the Miniature Maniac because he loves art pieces. And just to kind of get into that perspective, to get into that mindset of like, you know, who's a fan of the lore, who's a fan of the artistry, and then who's a fan of the game, and how do all of those things combine and work together. But that's the news coming from Star Wars Legion, but there was a whole bunch of stuff for another Star Wars game, Shatterpoint. Some absolute hero videotaped the screen at Adepticon when they were showing off some of the new things coming to Shatterpoint. Thank you so much, because now I get to see them because I didn't go to this event. But man, they showed off a ton of stuff. And Shatterpoint isn't even like coming out really, really soon. Like, it's still in the summer. it's gonna be a minute before we actually get to like really sink our teeth in the Shatterpoint, which I am cautiously excited for. I got to demo at Adepticon. The gameplay didn't knock my socks off, but it was like a 5-minute demo, and the person giving the demos was like, you can tell they're doing the exact same thing over and over and over all day. Like, she was popping Ricola to try to keep her mouth working so that she can continue to give this presentation of how the game works. It was a little, but I see some stuff going on there. It has a really interesting kind of damage tree where you can choose different ways to deal damage the more hits you actually roll. Very similar to, I've heard it's very similar to like Dreadball, and I know it's very, very similar to a lovely game called Arena Rex, which I bought tons of stuff for at Adepticon. It looks really, really fun. It's like a Greco-Roman gladiator game, which is a really, really interesting universe to play in. You don't see that a lot for miniature war games. Usually you just get straight high fantasy or straight science fiction. But yeah, somebody recorded the screen, and so now I get to see all of the lovely things that they showed off. First up, Mother Talzin and the Night Sisters, from one of the most exciting arcs in Star Wars The Clone Wars. Star Wars The Clone Wars, the animated show that was started out on Cartoon Network, probably some of the best Star Wars to ever Star Wars. And what was really, really smart is they created these new characters, Ahsoka Tano and Asajj Ventress. And at first, you're just like, okay, Jedi and a Sith Padawan, but they kind of grow up over the course of the show, and you meet them at all these different points in their life, and they're kind of like your eyes and ears into this universe and what's going on. Probably what like little boy Anakin was supposed to be in the actual movies. But yeah, it's really, I forget who said that they wanted to see Night Sisters in Star Wars Shatterpoint, and I thought there's no way they're gonna bring the Night Sisters. They're such a tiny little thing in the world of Star Wars, but here they are, and they're lovely, and they're super cool, and they lasted almost 2 episodes. I don't want to spoil anything, but it's really, really exciting. Those are going to be like auto pre-orders for me. They're really, really cool. They're a really, really cool arc in the TV show. And then moving on to Mace Windu and some clones. One of those clones is almost certainly Commander Fox, who I think was in charge of Coruscant. And, everybody loves Mace Windu and his purple lightsaber. He's in his Clone Wars era costume, but he's in kind of a movie style. The style of Shatterpoint is probably pretty clever, although I would have preferred just straight Clone Wars cartoon because I just love the look of the Clone Wars cartoon so much, and I think it would have been really fun to paint specifically for that kind of cartoony style. But it makes sense to do it in 3D or in based on the movies too. It's kind of like a 50-50 split because now they can have things that weren't in the cartoon and it won't look really, really weird or awkward. Although it would have been really cool if they had brought back some of the artists who worked in the Clone Wars cartoon so that they could cartoonify all of the characters moving forward. That would have been my preference, but I think they struck a good balance between the characters from the Clone Wars TV show are sort of look like their cartoony counterparts, but then the characters who only existed in live action still look appropriate in this setting. So Commander Fox probably, and Mace Windu before he got thrown out a window. Master Windu went right through the window. Now the bounty hunters are really, really interesting. You got your classics, Cad Bane and Aurra Sing. We knew they were going to be in the game because they're just like the most popular bounty hunters in Star Wars. But then we've got a Chadrafan, which is like the little bat-like aliens, and the Devorian bounty hunter, which I'm sure are just kind of generic bounty hunters, but I really hope that it's Veely, who has been in some comic books and some expanded Star Wars material, and he's like a really, really funny bounty hunter, where he thinks he's like kind of really tough and a badass, but he's often, everybody around him gets the better hand of him. But yeah, for me, that Devorian is Veely and his little Chadrafan buddy, and the little robot that Cad Bane has, because Cad Bane is just so evil. But then he has like a really, really cute robot sidekick that he just runs through him because he keeps blowing him up because he doesn't care. A bounty hunter pack makes a lot of sense. It'll be interesting to see. I mean, presumably they're going to bring, actually, I think they've already shown off Mandalorian is coming to the game, a classic Mando. And so he'll probably be the bounty hunter that you can include in a good guy list. And these will all be bounty hunters that you can bring in bad, because bounty hunters are sort of bad guys. It's very nebulous how they exist in the world of Star Wars because it seems like even Old Republic, the Galactic Republic, the Empire, the First Order, seems like they don't actually have that much reach when you get out to the farther edges of the galaxy. It seems like it's a pretty lawless place, so bounty hunters were a really, really smart pick. And then we've got some boring stuff. Padawan Ahsoka is going to be alongside Plo Koon and a couple of other clones. Plo Koon is really, really cool looking. He's a neat guy. He gets expanded on in the Clone Wars TV show, where you find out that he's the master who actually found Ahsoka, which they never really explain how exactly they find the little tiny baby Jedi. And it's never really expanded upon how these baby Jedi are actually like inducted into the being a Jedi. I mean, I guess it's like an honor, and so the parents are just kind of fine with it. There's a really, really great comic book. There's a great series of comic books. I think they were printed by like Dark Horse in probably 2010. There was like, I think they only made like 10 issues. I think it was called Star Wars Tales. And it was these non-canonical stories from all these different artists and authors. And one of them was about a bounty hunter kidnapping a Jedi baby, and then Mace Windu shuts it down. But then he finds out that the bounty hunter was actually hired by the parents because they gave up their child to the Jedi Order, but then they got cold feet and they decided that they wanted their child back. So he arrests the bounty hunter, but then he takes the baby back to the parents. And all throughout the course of this thing, you get, I'm spoiling all of it, but you can just Google it. It's a great read. It's like 6 pages. It's not much. But you find out that his parents, Mace Windu's parents, are trying to get into contact because they're like, we just want to meet you one time. And he deletes the email, the Star Wars email from his little iPad. It's a beautiful, beautiful story, but it kind of brings up the ideas of like, the Jedi are weird. They don't really work, which I guess is all what the prequels are about. But it's not put into those exact words and actions. It was a really, really interesting read. Star Wars Tales. If you're at all interested in going down a rabbit hole of really, really good Star Wars content, Star Wars Tales, really, really great series of comic books. But then what really jumped out at me, the thing I was really, really excited for, is the weirdest thing ever, and nobody else is gonna think this is as cool as me. But Padme, and her handmaidens. I love The Phantom Menace so much. It's an absolute mess of a movie. It doesn't have a main character, but I love it so, so much. And I'm really, really excited to paint Queen Amidala and Sabe and the handmaidens. I think they would just make such a fun thing to play with. It's such like a weird thing. You don't really get any information on like Sabe and the handmaidens. And then weirdly in Attack of the Clones, the fake queen explodes almost immediately, and it's somebody named Corday. And I'm like, okay, maybe I just was wrong that her name was Sabe, but then it's just a completely different person, because apparently Sabe went back to Tatooine to try to free the slaves, because Star Wars forgot that there were slaves on Tatooine, but apparently Queen Amidala didn't, and so she tried to put a stop to that. But it's a whole thing from the Darth Vader comics from 2020, which are actually pretty darn good. There's a great little arc where Darth Vader runs into Sabe, and they have like a great little will they won't they romance, which is really, really weird because Sabe looks exactly like Amidala, and everything gets really, really weird and hairy, which is classic Star Wars, because you got brothers kissing sisters, you got all sorts of weird romances going on in Star Wars, and it's just perfect. But yeah, I'm really, really excited for some Phantom Menace love in the form of Queen Amidala and the Handmaidens, which is great because everybody would have guessed it would be Attack of the Clones, Queen Amidala, because that's who she is in the Clone Wars. But no, they picked Phantom Menace to show off, and I'm so here for it. It's gonna be great. I can't wait to throw some speed paints on the handmaidens. They all got their little cowboy pistols. I'm so happy and excited to see the Phantom Menace getting a little bit of love, because it's my favorite. In all of Star Wars, it might be up there. Like I have a real list of my favorite Star Wars movies based on like if they're good, but Phantom Menace is often just at the top of the list for just my enjoyment of it for all sorts of different reasons. I love Jar Jar. I love the pod racing. I even love all the weirdness that comes from the boring stuff like Coruscant or the arguably racist Trade Federation. It's great. I love Phantom Menace so much. It also existed in a weird time in 1999, before special effects really took over and it was all done on the computer. where everything kind of just is evenly lit and takes place during the day, so you can really admire everything you're looking at on screen. Where moving forward, everything has kind of got this like CGI, super high contrast filter over everything. But man, Phantom Menace is a good looking movie. I mean, every Star Wars movie looks really good, but Phantom Menace, there's a little something special about it. It really bridges the gap between the old trilogy and all of the new stuff. It's really, go watch Phantom Menace again. I guarantee it's still as bad as you remember, but it's interesting. It's a really interesting movie. And speaking of bridging the gap, Shatterpoint showed off just a few things from the classic trilogy. We got Darth Vader and some stormtroopers, classic, we all knew it was gonna happen. A little pack of heroes. We've got Princess Leia disguised as Bosch the Bounty Hunter, Operative Luke when he's in his cool black robes. We've got Drink Cart R2-D2, my favorite R2-D2. And then we've got Lando Calrissian in his Skiff Guard costume, which also, why was he there? Like, he infiltrated Jabba's palace immediately. He's already there at the beginning of the movie before anybody else has shown up. Was he just hanging out? Like, I guess he was kind of scouting the place out, but how long has he been scouting the place out? What was his goal? What was his plan? What was he trying to do? I don't know. It's a whole mess. I would love a comic book. I would love a comic book of the original plan for how to get Han Solo, because I think that would actually lead to some awesomeness. And speaking of awesomeness, a pack of Ewoks. Quite a few Ewoks, actually. They look fantastic. But the Ewoks have been teased for Star Wars Legion. And it probably would have been smart. I mean, I guess the Legion Ewoks will probably come out before these Ewoks, but are people actually excited for Ewoks? They're a huge part of Return of the Jedi for some reason. They're very, very silly. They're still sort of awesome, but it's very weird. I don't know if, like, Ewoks are as beloved by the Star Wars community as Atomic Mass Games seems to think they are, because we're getting many Ewoks for different Star Wars games. I mean, of course, I would have preferred Guns, because I think that would have made for an excellent pack of miniatures. But yeah, I don't know. Please leave a comment. Yay or nay Ewoks coming to all these games, because they're kind of cool. Like, I think I would really appreciate seeing them on the shelf, but if I'm at my friendly local game store, I don't know if Ewoks are going to come home with me over, like, you know, battle droids or rebel troopers or stormtroopers or like all of the other things that are available in the game. I don't know if Ewoks are going to be the thing that makes it into the shopping cart. It's very interesting. I don't know how they make those sorts of decisions. And speaking of things that are just as lame as the Ewoks, Inquisitors for the Empire. First seen in Star Wars Rebels, and then we were seeing smatterings of them in like the Obi-Wan show and some other places. And they're cool. They're very cool. Don't get me wrong. I like their look. I like their cool lightsabers. But man, can I not get past the fact that they keep getting bested by like 12-year-old Ezra Bridger. Like, I mean, in Star Wars Rebels, they're just Team Rocket. They're the bad guys who show up. They have a little kooky, are they gonna pull one over on the heroes? Nope, they get blasted into the sky and then they turn into a little star as they cry out. I don't know, they're pretty lame, but they're like, I get why they're cool. Like, our heroes can never really lose in Star Wars. The good guys are always gonna win. Although it would be really cool if they didn't sometimes. That would make for some really interesting stories only from the perspectives of the bad guys. But in real actual Star Wars, I'm sure the Inquisitors are actually very successful at hunting down and murdering the last remaining Jedi. And it just so happens that this little 12-year-old boy with a homemade lightsaber has no problem pulling the wool over their eyes all the time. I mean, sometimes the cold opens of episodes will be them escaping the Inquisitors. Like, how lame do you have to be to not even be part of the main story, but you get bested immediately, and that is the cold open for that episode that's going to be about like delivering fruit to somebody, and you're just a little tiny thing at the beginning. I don't know, the Inquisitors, they're fine. They were kind of cool in the Obi-Wan show. They kept dying and coming back to life. Which again is very par for the course for Star Wars. But the Inquisitors. And then they showed off some renderings of stuff. We've got the main character from the Star Wars Battlefront 2 game, the Han Solo, hopefully with his Battlefront 2 beard, because no one liked it. But I think it actually it feels very Han Solo to just try to grow it out and see how it feels, and just trying out a new look. I really, really like Han Solo with a beard because it looks so wrong. Oh yeah, and then we got Mando, and then we've got the gang from Rebels, which I think that they actually make a lot of sense in a game like this. A character-focused game where you put together like a tiny squad of dudes. I think that they actually fit fairly well, and I would be interested in like painting them up and gaming with them, even though Rebels is not my favorite Star Wars. It's fine. It's fine. It's not as good as Clone Wars or anything else, but it's all right. It's not a bad watch. I always hear that season 4 is the best, but I stopped watching at season 3. And so apparently I missed all of the good stuff, although I don't understand how the final season being good can like redeem anything, because I would still not like all of the episodes that I don't like. And if there's good episodes in 4, I would probably just like those episodes, because I don't know, I view all of Star Wars in a vacuum. Even the stuff that I don't like so much, it doesn't diminish any of my enjoyment of any of the other Star Wars out there. I just like Star Wars a lot. And I'm very excited for Shatterpoint miniatures. I'm excited to actually give Shatterpoint a try, like a real try, not just a demo, because I've heard mixed things. I've heard people that sound a little bit more like me after the demo, and I've heard people who are like, oh my God, the demo was really, really good and I really, really enjoyed it. But I guess we won't really know anything until the game is actually in our hands and is ready to be played. But you know what could be in your hands immediately and ready to be played with? That's right, the terrain on our Patreon. This month we have the Twisted Train Station, a whole bunch of beautiful scatter terrain that you can build an entire board of for any skirmish game you can think of, although if you enjoy the game Malifaux, it might be the perfect terrain set for you. We also make one extra episode of Eon's Battle every single week where we take a look at our viewers' miniatures and give some ideas and critiques of how to improve their painting, and we have a tier where you can get your name on one of my Black Templar Space Marines and you can join the crusade. Man, I really like Star Wars a lot, and I'm really excited for those handmaidens and for Sabe and Queen Amidala in the Phantom Menace costumes. I just love it so much. It's weird. I really focus on these little tiny things in Star Wars, almost at the expense of everything else. I just get really wrapped up in these little tiny details, but I really, really enjoy it. And I love that Star Wars is this humongous franchise where sometimes you can get things from those little tiny things in these games and books and movies and TV shows. It's really, really exciting. Thanks for watching.